States House of Representatives, but I don't feel we have done our work. Today, we had an opportunity to perhaps hear from some of those agencies.
Now, Democrats are facing new obstacles that are in their way of getting President Biden's massive Build Back Better bill passed before the end of next month. Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren are urging Congress to put unused crisis relief funds towards a new round of checks specifically for people that need it. Don't forget that the first major stimulus package to be passed during the crisis was the CARES Act. It was passed in March 2020, included about $150 billion for state and local governments. However, the money came with a spending deadline of December 31st, 2021, and the funding has been used on a vast range of projects. But about $10.4 billion of the money sent to those government entities has not been spent. This means there are billions of dollars left in crisis relief funds that could be put towards another round of stimulus payments, and there are already multiple states and cities that have proposed extra stimulus checks for residents that are financially struggling right now because of the crisis. States like California, Illinois, and Tennessee have already agreed to send out more relief checks, and that's some great news. The Supreme Court Justice has a plan to retire and is throwing another curveball into the efforts to get President Biden's agenda passed. Appointing Justice Breyer's replacement to the court is a win for President Biden and the Democrats. By the timing of the announcement, could make it more difficult for Biden and Democratic lawmakers to negotiate and pass the Build Back Better bill, which is a social spending plan which everyone wants to get done. Biden has told reporters that plans to complete the process as quickly as possible are underway. Biden said he plans to announce his nominee soon. Democratic aides have already indicated that the Majority Leader, Chuck Schumer, will try to follow a confirmation timeline close to that of Supreme Court Justice Amy Coney Barrett. A nomination will be followed by confirmation hearings from the Senate Judiciary Committee, and eventually a confirmation vote on the Senate floor. So while nothing prevents the White House from trying to get the spending package finished before the Supreme Court votes, it would definitely be a challenge to do so. It's important to remember that most Democrats want to see a version of the Build Back Better passed as soon as possible. When asked about whether there were concerns that the Supreme Court nomination process would complicate other legislative priorities, like the Build Back Better, White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki said, "We are entirely capable of doing more things at once." So there's a lot of things going on, a lot of progress being made, but lawmakers are making time to complete negotiations on what should be included and removed from Biden's Build Back Better bill. Progressives this week have pressed Biden and Senate Democrats to ensure that it passes before the State of the Union address. A revised measure will need to pass both the House and Senate. In case of the climate and social spending bill, which the Senate intends to pass using budget reconciliation, Biden needs to have the backing of all 50 Democratic senators. But the good news, everybody, is that Joe Manchin will eventually support the Build Back Better bill. People believe that Joe Manchin is gettable on a revised Build Back Better package. And people think they can get the job done with Joe Manchin on their side.
Madam President, on Friday, our country received another extraordinary bit of news about the state of our economic recovery. Last month, the economy created 467,000 new jobs, far exceeding all expectations. This comes on the heels of news that our economy grew at its fastest rate in decades last year. With last week's jobs numbers, the U.S. economy now has added a total of 6.6 million jobs in President Biden's first year in office. Let me say that again. In 1 year alone, the economy has added a whopping 6.6 million jobs back to the economy, the most ever recorded for a president's first year. This includes the creation of 367,000 manufacturing jobs, the most in 30 years. For all the difficulties of the past 2 years and for the real challenges our economy faces today, this jobs number is a remarkable milestone. It's a reminder that who gets elected to office makes a big difference. A year ago, Democrats promised to fix the mess our country was in after President Trump botched our pandemic response. We promised to lift our economy out of the abyss, to get people back to work, back to the classroom, and to do it safely by following the science. It's why Democrats worked furiously last year to pass the American Rescue Plan. It's why the Senate came together to pass USICA, which we will work to enact into law in the near future. And it's why we came together to pass a historic bipartisan infrastructure package that's now putting people back to work fixing our roads, bridges, internet, lead piping, and so much more. With 6.6 million jobs gained and record economic growth in our first year, Democrats are delivering on our promise. And it's not just that job creation exceeded expectations. Wages for American workers grew in 2021, an indication from top forecasters that wages are, and indications from top forecasters are that wages will continue to grow in 2022. A year into executing our democratic agenda, the American economy is in the midst of a historic turnaround. But, Madam President, the job is not over. And even as wages are up, Democrats are taking action to lower costs. We need to help everyday families afford the daily essentials, just as we need to relieve our supply chains and rebuild American manufacturing, including by focusing on critical technologies like semiconductors. We took an important step in the right direction last week after the House passed the companion legislation to USICA. I applaud the House for passing this legislation, and I join my Senate colleagues from both sides of the aisle in saying we're pleased to have gotten the ball rolling when we passed the USICA bill, formerly known as Endless Frontiers, last summer. There's a lot of work to do to enact USICA into law, so I look forward to moving quickly to a conference so the House and Senate can bridge the differences between our proposals. Once again, I want to thank my colleagues from both sides of the aisle for leadership on this very important legislation. This will continue to be Democrats' focus: lowering costs, increasing wages, and bringing jobs back from overseas while creating more jobs right here at home. It's what Democrats have worked on for the past 12 months as we've helped Americans get back to normal, and it's what we'll continue to focus.
Please sit down. Thank you. Good afternoon. I'd like to start by thanking Chancellor Schultz for making this visit to Washington. We had an opportunity to have a very productive meeting. I think our staffs wondered whether we were going to let them in at all. We spent the first half hour more talking together, and it's been a very, very useful meeting. One of the things that struck me was the shared values and that shape how each of us approaches leadership, among them the foundational commitment to the dignity of workers and the need to treat all people with respect. So I enjoyed speaking with you, Olaf, and I know working together will continue to strengthen and deepen our alliance and the extensive partnership between Germany and the United States.
Without objection.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to start my remarks by going back to near the very beginning of this Congress, when we were debating what was called the American Rescue Plan. We were told then by our colleagues on the other side that this was going to save the country. $1.9 trillion of debt-financed spending, they said, was going to fix everybody's concerns in the United States. Where are we today? 9.1% consumer price inflation, which we told them was coming. Gas prices doubling. Economic stagnation. GDP contracted by 0.9% in the second quarter. We're now arguing over semantics about what is a recession. 65% of the people in this country think we are already in a recession. And more than 80% of the country think our economy is on the wrong track. The nonpartisan Penn-Wharton budget model has made a comment about what we're looking at today. But what are we being told today? Another rescue plan. Only this time they call it the Inflation Reduction Act. The Penn-Wharton budget model says this bill will, if anything, raise inflation in the first few years of this budget, with a small and significant negative effect later in this decade. That same model concludes that there is, quote, low confidence that the legislation will have any impact on inflation. But it does have an impact on all of us and our economy. It does nothing to bring the economy out of stagnation and recession, but rather the Inflation Reduction Act of 2022 gives us higher taxes, more spending, higher prices, and an army of IRS agents. Let's talk about the taxes first. Hundreds of billions of dollars are raised through taxes, around 350 to 400 billion. There's a new book minimum tax on corporations. There's a new tax on stock buybacks. There's, believe this or not, a new tax on gasoline, on oil and gas production and refineries.